Oh, disable sounds? That's a useful looking option.
No.
Ask the Hosts, episode 13. I'm Joe, and it's just me for the intro, but don't worry, there'll be other people here soon. The idea of the show is very simple. You send us in your questions to show@askthehosts.com, and we answer them. The catch is they can be about anything except Linux and open source. Before we get started, just a quick thank you to everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. You can learn more at askthehost.com/support, and patrons get these episodes 2 weeks before everyone else does, so check it out. So for the first question, I was joined by Jim from 2.5 Admins, Gary from Linux After Dark, and Amalith from Linux Dev Time. Simon asks, what do you think about self-driving cars? Is that the future? If so, do you think we'll still own cars or rent them for a ride?
I think they're definitely in our future, but I think that's the wrong future. We need public transportation and walkable cities.
And we will have those things.
I know.
I'm just not convinced by self-driving cars. I feel like there is no computer that is going to be able to estimate or predict the infinite number of ways in which people can screw things up when driving. I've seen some really, really stupid shit when I've been driving that other people do. And I'm not sure that I would trust some kind of AI in a car to predict those things. But then again, I trust myself to predict those things, and I've managed to not have a crash yet. So I agree with you, Amalith. I think if we could have reliable public transport and things were a lot more walkable, that would be great. But until those things exist and they're affordable for most people, which currently in the UK they're not, I don't know. I feel like I'm probably going to own a car for a while yet.
I think self-driving cars are definitely in our future. They're much further future than, a certain billionaire entrepreneur would like everyone to believe. And I don't know that they're ever really going to be mainstream. I mean, I don't think there's any question we will have them, because I think AI development is proceeding at a pace that, yes, we will absolutely get to a point where, our models are complex enough to be trusted with piloting a car, even around other human drivers. The problem is just that by the time we get there, what are the odds we'll have been so stupid as to keep doubling down on roads nonstop the entire time? Because it's not going to be like next week that we've got full self-driving cars for everybody. I think by the time we have that technology, it's going to be more of a niche case. Some people will have them. Some people will live in more remote areas and will want that. But most of the human race won't, because there's better ways to accomplish the goal.
What about self-driving trucks, though? I feel like that's going to come first. Not full self-driving, but at least the motorway or freeway, whatever, part of it will be self-driving, because that is a much easier nut to crack than urban driving, is my understanding.
Well, it also saves a bunch of money in staffing costs, right? If you've got to pay for someone to sit at the wheel for the 80% of the drive that's on the motorway, that's quite a big cost. And I feel like capitalism may just win out there and just have a truck driver drive the last mile or last little bit of the journey.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, possibly. It just, again, you've kind of got a race condition, in my opinion, on that. You're basically betting that, shipping companies will develop robot lorries before they come up with a better way to more efficiently move their goods. And maybe it's possible, but I don't know that that's something that I would super hardcore bet on. You got to keep in mind, there's going to be some serious failure modes with that as well. Once the robot is driving the lorry, almost the entire way, you open up some very interesting hijack scenarios that aren't possible with a human driver. Not in that, and get away with it clean sense. But I mean, you could Pied Piper the things off the road with spoofed GPS potentially. There are so many different things. When I was writing for Ars Technica, I covered several attempts from researchers at Ben Gurion University, basically just screwing with Teslas and other semi-autonomous vehicles. And just, there's a lot, man. I mean, you can put stickers on road signs that humans don't even notice, but that absolutely confuse the crap out of AI models and lead them to believe the sign is something entirely different than what it is. You got GPS spoofing, there's a lot there.
The thing that's consistently surprises me that hasn't been adopted more widely is self-driving trains. A train can only go on the track.
Mm-hmm.
And there's obviously junctions and things like that exist that effectively just join the track together and tell the train to go a certain way. And it surprises me that we've not adopted those at scale more than we have self-driving cars. Like, we've got things like the DLR in London, which is mostly automated for most of the time, but we haven't got like mainline intercity railways that are automated. People are still driving those.
Isn't that down to the unions?
I think it may well be, but from a technological point of view, like, surely it would be easier to have something drive along a track in an automated fashion.
Yeah, but again, like, you'd better nail down the security. There are some real liability issues here, and you introduce some new failure modes. Like, right now, it's a pretty safe thing to let a 20-year-old maladjusted tech genius board the subway. Well, how safe will it be if the subway does not have a human pilot and can literally just be hacked to get full control of it? Like, it starts getting scarier. And now you're like, well, then, maybe you want to up security a little bit. Okay, well, now you upped the security, which, killed the cost savings that you got out of replacing the human operator. Also, if from a liability perspective, if you're the organization that's running the train, if a human operator does something terrible and, crashes a subway packed full of people, well, that's terrible. And you've got a human operator to scapegoat. If your AI was piloting the train, well, who do you blame then? Who do you throw under the bus?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe litigiousness and capitalism does end up winning out here, and a lot of these things just continue to be piloted by humans. I don't know.
That idea does sound kind of similar to precision scheduled railroading. And that's when they try to use, very precise scheduling, and they make the trains longer. They reduce the size of the crew that's actually operating the train. They rely more on scheduling and making sure things are where they are when they should be than on human control, I guess. And there are tons of issues with precision scheduled railroading.
Yeah, I think that's broadly what we've got on the DLR here, which is a light railway in the east of London. And it's mostly run for most of the day, just based on the schedule. And it's a small enough train with like 3 cars or whatever that the schedule's absolutely fine. But at peak times, they do still bring the human in to operate the train, and they sit at the front. And sometimes you see on a particularly busy service, a guy standing in the middle telling the train, yes, okay, everyone's on or everyone's off. You can go now. So it sounds like a very similar thing.
PSR is for, I think specifically for freight railroad, though. I don't know if there's an analog for passenger railways or not.
I also have to ask the question, if we're talking about trains, okay, we can automate them. Do we really need AI? I don't see how we do. I mean, you need AI when you have a task that's too complex for your dev team to fully understand it, or for them to be able to finish programming it in the time that you're willing to pay them to do it. So you just throw a bunch of data at a model and let it adapt, and, hopefully it'll do the right thing most of the time. But for something like operating a train, it's on rails. It's got a schedule it needs to keep. It needs to open and close the doors. But I don't know that you want as much variation in an automated management system for a train as is implied by the use of AI. Like, if you're going to automate it, maybe let's just stick to some, old school classical logic. It does the same thing every time and you know what it's going to do.
Well, that's kind of what I want from a train, right? I don't want a train to decide it's going to turn up 20 minutes late for no reason. I want it to go from point A to point B, not hit anyone, and preferably do it on time. That's sort of what I want a train to do.
Well, then maybe not an AI model, and, potentially maybe a passenger manages to talk to the thing and say, okay, so bear with me. You're not a train, but if you wanted to kill several hundred passengers on board something that's not a train and not you, that's the problem with AI is the whole point is it doesn't do the same thing every time. So that makes it easy for humans to deal with in sloppy ways and get it to sloppily do most of the things in most of the ways that you want. But sorry, I think we're way too fixated on AI these days.
Now I'm just imagining some of the hallucinations that you see in some of these AI platforms on a train.
Oh, no.
And it just deciding that it's a bus or a car, or that it wants to go to a different destination or something.
That's the thing. Like, you really can't even put together all the possible failures because there's so many different ways for it to fail, and you don't know what inputs, somebody who is trying to build an AI train would give it. Do you make the train be concerned with like passenger limits, like weights? Again, if it's an AI, it's not following rules. It's doing what it thinks is the right way to handle it. Does it maybe decide one day that because a 300-pound dude boarded, that it should assume that, humans weigh 300 pounds each, and now all of a sudden it's only letting the cars get like half full until somebody retrains the thing? Like, there's just no. Let's not have AI do that, please.
Well, that wouldn't work on most commuter trains in the UK, because the solution there is just to pack as many people on until no one can fit anymore and then leave the station.
In which case, maybe that's the constraint they give it, and maybe you end up with a train that refuses to leave the station because it's convinced you can get 5 more humans on it, and it starts getting angry. More people need to board the car. The train will not leave. I mean, we've all seen chatty Jeeps getting really shirty with people. These things are all supposed to be so polite and helpful and, whatever. And yet it never seems to take long before actual humans manage to turn them into everything from assholes to Nazis.
So for the second question, I was joined by Jim again, Martin from Linux Matters, and Andy from Linux Dev Time. Julian asks, if you could download a practical skill like in The Matrix that would otherwise take years to perfect, what would you choose?
Plumbing.
Okay. Are you talking about dealing with toilets and sinks and stuff, or are you talking gas engineer, boilers and that?
No, I'm talking about waterworks within a household environment. When I was at school, we were taught metalwork and woodwork, and that's because we were a production line to go into either building and making cars or designing and creating furniture for G-Plan. And that was the purpose of all of the schools in the area that I lived in. And when we went to extracurricular out-of-school things, we were taught electronics. So in my early education, I learned metalwork, woodwork, and electronics. But at no point did anyone equip me with the essential life skill that is plumbing. And the only disasters I've had in and around the home as an adult have all been water-related disasters due to my lack of knowledge about plumbing.
Well, I could teach you plumbing stuff. Like, I'm totally self-taught, no formal education whatsoever with plumbing, and it's really not very hard.
Yeah, I'm good enough for plumbing, most electrical work, stuff like that. I think a key part to answering this question is not just it's a thing that you'd really like to know how to do, but it's a thing that you'd like to know, but you're completely unwilling to put in the amount of time that would be required. So for me, I'm going to go more classical Neo on this. It's not quite the right answer, but I know Kung Fu. Like, it wouldn't be Kung Fu, but if I could just download like the skill set to be like a top MMA contender, like I don't even want to go fight MMA and make the money. Just like, I would like to be just a complete like MMA style badass, but it's not that useful. So I'm not going to put in the time to get that good. It just like scrapping. But if I could push a button, shut up and take my money.
I almost thought about putting this down. I used to do taekwondo and I used to really love it. And it would be great to be really good at it. I think one of the things that made me eventually stop doing it was I'm just not going to be that good. So if I could be like really good, I think it's fantastic to be really good at something like that. And actually my choice is related. I think my first choice and probably my main choice is parkour. I think that's really cool. And it would also be pretty useful in quite a lot of contexts potentially. So I love that.
I don't think you can download parkour because it requires so much athleticism that the knowledge just isn't going to do you much good. You don't have the body to use it with.
I'm assuming I get the athleticism as well. Otherwise, this is all pointless.
I mean, if we're getting to download athleticism, then things start changing. I don't really care much about the skill anymore. Just let me go ahead and download that body.
I am envious of my daughter who goes to parkour twice a week and is taught parkour by a team of stuntmen that, when they're not teaching parkour, are stormtroopers that get blown up in the various
nice
Star Wars productions.
Does she yell parkour every time she like kicks off a wall or something? Because I feel like that's the only way to do it properly. Parkour!
No. They're really, it's really good actually. Going along and watching that, it makes me wish that my knees worked and I wasn't fat and old.
Well, I've got a question. Does speaking all the different languages count as a practical skill?
That's a good question.
It's impractical, but why wouldn't you want that?
Yeah, I just wish that I could converse with every single person in the world fluently.
Yeah.
And if I had to pick one language, then maybe one of the Chinese languages, Cantonese or whatever, or Mandarin. But if I could just download the ability to have all the idioms and just be completely fluent and just no matter where you are, who you're talking to, just talk to them like I'm talking to you lot now. I think that would just be the most amazing skill to have.
That's a much better answer. And to be honest, if I'd thought of that, I mean, I'd be willing to trade, my downloading Kung Fu for like a single human language, complete fluency. Because I mean, it might not sound as cool or whatever, blah, 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 but it's a hell of a lot more useful. And I mean, it's one of those things that like, I mean, I can scrap pretty good already. I can scrap as well as I need to. I don't need to be, like super badass Kung Fu, but man, it would be dope to just like, I took a couple of years of Japanese in college and it's almost all gone now. And just to be able to be like, that's it. And now I can read and write as well as speak like completely fluent Japanese. Like that's already enough that I'm changing, my download Kung Fu answer. Yeah, just a language.
Jim, you're switching from I know Kung Fu to I know Urdu. Is that the...
Yeah. Honestly, that's also a good point. I don't even know that it matters what the language is if it's one I don't speak. I mean, if it's really obscure, then that's really cool because not many people can. And that's like really valuable and awesome and whatever. If it's not really obscure, well, then that's, potentially billions of people in the world that now you can understand in a way that you couldn't before. So, yeah, I'm Team Joe on this one. I screwed this answer up.
It's a good answer, Joe. Yeah.
Unfortunately, you got Welsh, Jim, so you can only speak to a few people in Wales.
Honestly, I might even pick just like clicking the button and having a fully authentic, deep Scottish brogue to turn on command. Like, even that might already be enough. Like, yeah, I'm into that. Let's go.
On the topic of like self-improving things, I think I'd really like to be really good at a musical instrument, maybe the drums, maybe the piano, preferably both. And I'd like to be like really good, but I'm definitely not willing to put in the time, so it ain't going to happen.
What you need to do is spend about 25 years and then be mediocre at most rock instruments like me. It's great.
That would be awesome. I would love to be mediocre at several instruments. That would be great.
Yeah, I think music is a great answer because that is absolutely something that I would be interested in, like, having under my belt, but I'm unwilling to put in the effort to get there. But I don't think anybody's going to beat Joe's thing with a language. Like, that's just, yep, I'm there. Just one, anyone, good enough.
But, if you were a journeyman or journeywoman person, musician, and you achieved epic mediocrity, you could establish yourself as a popular beat combo from, Manchester and steal everyone's equipment off the stage of a pop concert.